Well, hello, Dr. Lemmon here. Again, this is the April chat, so I'll go on with my April blog. So you're either on wizardscatch.com or wizardscatch as a channel on YouTube. Okay, either way, we're good to go. Uh, and once again, my theme for this year, 2021, is let's figure out a plan to do something. We have no idea what to do. Uh, things are changing, and we got to kind of get with the program. So that becomes the goal. Last month in March, I talked about energy. I said energy is not a problem when you got a task to come in. You just kind of put the plan together. I attended a little bit in energy flows. I did get a question. So before I go into April's, let me answer that question. They said, what happens when you seem to run out of energy? You got to go, you got to go out and plant some stuff in the garden in this time of year, March, April. And what if all of a sudden you think it's going to take 4 hours and it takes longer? What goes wrong? Why do you run out of steam? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's kind of like an estimate. If someone does an estimate and thinks it's going to be 4 hours to paint a wall and it takes 6 hours, that means their estimate was poor. So they ran out of steam. That's exactly because the estimate was bad. The request for energy comes from a package. You put an idea together with pictures, assessments, just like an estimator does. They come out, they're going to fix your roof. They take some pictures. They tell how many hours, what's going to be lumber. They figure up a price. They give you the price. You write a check. So that's it, right? If it goes over, they lost a little money. If it goes under, well, they made a little extra money. And so it kind of balances out. It's not a perfect thing. It's the same for you. When you got a job to do and you're sitting there thinking about it, you go, oh, okay, I got it all together. I got it all figured out in my head. You've made some assumptions, you shortcut it a little bit, and you kind of run out of steam. That's not a problem. You just stop. Just take a break. Go for a walk. Get your head clear. And come back and say, new estimate. What is it going to take to finish it? And then just wait a little bit. Relax a little bit. And then pretty soon the energy flows in. Maybe it's going to all happen tomorrow. Who knows? But that's the idea with it. The energy flows. That's not a problem. Okay? I got a new little scar on the side of my head, which kind of shows up in video. Uh, it's just a process of getting old. They call that sun damage. I'd probably call it cell phone damage, but it's like, we'll make everybody happy. They just, cut a hole in my head. Not a big deal. I've, been shot at and beat on enough times. It's not a big deal. But anyway, it's kind of a neat scar. I probably have more damage down here that eventually we'll have to, yeah. If you die young, you don't have any of these problems. If you live too long, it's like, then everything kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. But, we'll chit chat about that a little bit in another blog. So as we move into April, we're really talking about one of the toughest. There's two really challenging ones, and this is a tough one. It's tough because of finding balance in it. So let me see if I can explain clues and, normal growth for a person is that you take on a task or an idea. Say you're a kid and you learn to play a couple of child card games, Crazy Eights, things like that. All right, that's all fine and good. And then growth comes along when all of a sudden you move from Crazy Eights to all of a sudden playing poker with your friends. It's like, wow, yes, it's just a set of rules and a set of patterns. That's all it is that we learn. The way we operate and the way we learn is pattern recognition. Sequences, small sequences of pattern recognition, not a layout for a game or memory of all the 4 hours of playing. All we've got is little sequences of patterns. That's how we learn. And it's all based on the rules of the game. That's the structure. So it's the structure and the pieces that in repetition comply with the structure to make the moves, right? When you move into poker, now it's more moves, more variances, and a couple of different poker games that you can play. So the rules are somewhat similar in them, right? Betting may be a little different, right, for you guys that played poker. But most certainly it just means that there's a larger array of collection. That data actually comes from some experience with it. You start to build that data in there, and it all works really good. So normal growth is just that type of expansion. A lot of that also comes from application. You're going to find that you've learned those basic games, like video games when you learn them. If you get a harder one, it's still just kind of They just added another complex piece into it. But a lot of the original patterns are still congruent. So it's not, it gets more complicated. The range gets bigger, but the range gets a little bigger, but the patterns stay true to it. It's that amazing in anything that has strong patterns. Pieces like chess, for example, has rules, has strong patterns. To me, it's always amazing when you take a chess master and he's ready to start, he or she is ready to start a game, and all of a sudden somebody shows him a picture of the chessboard with a setup, with where the players are and everything. They just show him a picture, they hold it up. And the chess master looks at that, okay, and they start playing a game. And the chess master makes the moves to get all the components on the board to match that picture. Isn't that kind of amazing? They can make that happen. And they tried to play a little game on a couple of chess masters, and they gave them a picture that wasn't possible. For you guys that play chess, you know, there are certain set moves that we make, right? So some shots are impossible. A certain bishop to get on a certain square is not going to ever happen. So one chess master, they showed him a picture and he kind of shook his head and he got it really close. And when he brought the picture over, he says, okay, here it is as close as we can get it. But the picture you showed me is totally impossible to do in a game of chess, right? So all those moves are profound. A savant, for example, is just a master, not at figuring things out, but a master at patterns. So you present them with music and they can play Bach, they can play Beethoven, they can play, because that's all sequences of patterns. They can play that. If you start throwing things into them that don't follow the rules of the patterns, they do even worse than average people. So it's all pattern game. That's exactly how we learn, pattern pieces, right? Now, could you imagine you spent your whole life playing poker or Yahtzee or Monopoly or whatever, right? And you're really got kind of good at it. And then some fool comes along and changes all the rules. Now you hear my terms, I say secure into the background. The background is the rules. If you always play poker and all of a sudden, you all of a sudden now don't have the same cards, the same faces. We don't have spades, hearts, and diamonds. We now have 9 sets of cards with weird little stuff like tulips and poppy seeds and a whole game structure is totally different. We would just say, oh, that's a new game. But really, what we're joining into today with evolutionary change is a new game. The rules are changing out there. Now, let me give you a concrete example. For a long period of time, we were in what's called the traditional period. Traditional period says that all the games had rules. That was it. All the games had rules. So all you had to do was learn the patterns within the context of the games. And some of the patterns were familiar to other games, so they were easy to learn. Once you learn one, you can learn another, right? And so that was just a game of learning that. But then, starting somewhere in the 50s, we started getting like, wow, we started weighing out what would happen if we would abandon the rules. So when I say a no truth world, I mean we're starting to abandon the rules. That's what we're doing, right? So to give you kind of an example, what if all of a sudden someone in a banking company sat there and said, wow, I could do these maneuvers and make a lot of money, but it's not legal. So if I do it, I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get fined. But then he sits down and crunches the numbers. And he says, wow, so that company does something illegal, not ethical, not according to the rules, makes $90 million that year, gets caught, and has to pay a $10 million fine. So the net is $80 million. That's a little bit of the echoes that come out of the 2008 experience, right? Right. So all these people got past 1950. We started moving in the direction of the rules are changing. No truth world means that the rules for the game have changed. If we were secured in the old rules, we're assuming that's the way it's going to be. Now today it's totally chaotic, right? Because it's like we have rules, we have people lying to us about all kinds of stuff because they think that we don't understand or they don't, who knows what, right? The other thing that we do is that we're trying to enforce the old rules, and all of a sudden it looks like it's meaningless to enforce the old rules in a no-truth world. Everything gets pretty convoluted. Just read the papers. You see the whole thing's falling apart. It's not a problem. It just means that the whole package has changed. It's evolved. It means there's going to be more pieces in it. Yeah, we just doubled the playing cards in poker, and it would be impossible to follow the rules. So it's like, what are you going to be holding? 12 cards, 14 cards? I mean, you start to see how all the probability, everything is going to be off. That's the world we're moving into. It's all off. So you have to come again as a little child. Remember those terms? You have to move into this, and you have to start all over again, learning like, wow, how's this playing out today? And the really cool thing is that we're not going to arrive probably at new sets of rules. Now think about this. If we're moving in a direction of becoming a global citizen, then you can start to see if I have a company in the United States and the United States is finding me and on my case, the way I'm running my company, all I have to do is move somewhere. And then they're on the case the way I run my company, maybe in America, but they can't influence the way I run my company as a whole because now I'm in another country, right? Companies like Amazon, where are they based at, right? I think Ireland now. You start to see it's like, wow, we have changed the game. So what we really need to do if we're going to make new structure, new rules, produce a new game, we need to go to the global marketplace. We need to have the rules in the whole world by agreement, right? We have to sit down with China and with Russia and with all these countries, Great Britain, European nations, and Africa, of course, India, most certainly, and make some new structures, some new agreements. Now, when I say we, what I'm really saying is that that's happening right now. Come on, you guys, read a little bit. That's happening right now. China is on its way to be number one in power. So when you start to look at that element of its development, it's negotiating those kind of agreements, right, with all South Asian countries. It's negotiating that most certainly with Africa. I think in 1 year, it gave out more in aid to foreign countries than the World Bank has done in its history. Don't quote me on that, but I've been reading up on it, and most certainly you start to see that the world is changing in that direction. We really need to kind of get on the bandwagon. And so we really need to start to think in those directions. We have so many people, especially in America, on a comfort level. We've inflated this all, and we think, oh, wow, the cost of everything is going up. I hear people saying, China's ripping us off. Come on, we only buy 18% from China anyhow. Come on, it's not China ripping us off. It's the money is inflating because of the fact that we're like, the whole country is lived on borrowed money. The game has changed, right? We're totally in debt. Maybe you're totally in debt, but most certainly, maybe not, but most certainly the country is. So when the country gets totally in debt, all of a sudden the money inflates a little bit. So it costs you twice as much to buy lumber this year than last year because of the inflationary piece. And that's my assessment. Other people have different ideas, but that's the way I'm looking at it. And I'm just showing you this not to be able to give you a news flash, right? Because those are things you can absolutely read about. But I'm telling you this to how a system plays in, to how what I'm talking about is background secured. I'm saying that the way we thought things used to be is no longer that way. We sit there and we say, we want to make it back to the way it was in 1970 or something. I'm sorry, it's not going to go backwards. It's going to go forward. We are totally moving in a direction forward. I like to think that we're moving in a direction to come to some global understanding, right? And that's where we're going. And this whole system, the background system, right, is falling apart and will continue to falling apart. Whether it's going to do it traditionally in plagues and wars, right? So maybe we're done with at least big wars, world wars, right? Hopefully. Uh, there's little insurrections that most of those little insurrections are kind of civil stripes within countries. Yes. Uh, should we get involved a little bit and help out a little bit so that we don't have damage? I think so. I don't see that as a problem if we can finance it. I most certainly see other countries in the world, like China, doing that same thing. So I think that would be probably a wise thing to do if we can afford to do it. If we can't afford to do it and we have our own problems, then we really need to resolve that. But I think we're moving in a direction we have been for a long time. If you look at the history, we've been moving to larger tribes, and larger tribes. If we eventually get to where the planet Earth is one tribe and we can negotiate on that terms, yes, there'll be always somebody who doesn't want to mow their lawn or puts up a fence too high or breaks the rules somehow or another. And that has to be negotiated. It's always going to be that with humans, right? I go out of my way to break all the rules. and I have been in trouble many times for that. But I like to be able to find the perimeters. When someone says, you can't go past this line, I go, okay, well, we'll see what happens. I can remember one time, I really could feel this. I was in Cambodia and we were walking around where they had executed almost 400 people a day, right? So we're in the killing fields and they have signs up that shows a smiley face turned down. It's like no laughing, no smiling. They don't want people to make a joke out of the killing fields, but I'm sitting there and I'm going, wow, this is really depressed feeling. You're looking around and there's bones sticking out of the ground. It's like, oh, wow, God, it's amazing. And it was just, it was an overwhelm for me. A lot of emotion. It's just like, wow. I mean, I'm glad I went. It's like, wow, I'm looking around. It wasn't like a great place to go see, but it's like, wow, this is kind of interesting. You could feel that energy. It's like every day they came here and killed hundreds and hundreds of people just with a pipe. They beat them to death. So that's, I don't know. How do you put that in context? I'm standing there on the land and I could feel that. So I'm looking and I got all these ducks down there. So I just went over and sat on the ground. And the ducks all just came around me. And we just kind of like, I was in a huddle of ducks. We just were all sitting there and they're all kind of laying their head on my shoulder. And it's kind of like, it was the only way I could relate to the experience. It's like, we're just going to sit with this for a moment here, folks. Except the people weren't getting down on the ground, the ducks were, because they lived there. And I'm sure they could feel that energy too. They're probably thinking, what happened here? And here's a human sitting there and they're kind of like gathering all around me, you know? My wife took a couple of pictures of me out there just kind of covered with ducks, geese or whatever they were running around there yakking at me. And they were just kind of coming over being friendly and sniffing at me and rubbing their beaks in my hair. And we were just, hey, we were just having a moment. Yep. You see what happens when the rules of the game change? The rules of the game, Pol Pot changed the rules of the game. It's like, wow. You look at this and it's like, there's no pattern in my story. There's no patterns in this head that could justify all what I saw go on. It's just sitting there thinking, wow, this is kind of, wow. It all falls apart on you. You feel that. You're feeling that today. You're not sick. There's nothing wrong with you, probably. For the most part, it's just that the background's changing. We got to start all over again. It is not going to be as hard. It's going to be much easier, right? We still have some skill sets. We can read. We have learned a whole database of patterns. When the rules have changed, those patterns will have some application, but they'll have to change. Will that take you a little time? Traditionally, I find that when I train someone, and I've trained a lot of people in my life in different jobs and tasks, because that's one of the things I did with my degree in psychology, is that I was in corporate America training people for job positions and job titles, right? And then I had a lot of people, students that came to a center we put together that were training just for life situations and life skills. So I have done a lot of training. It takes someone about 2 years, if they're paying attention, takes about 2 years. So we're starting out in 2021. I wanted to put together some ideas. I've gone through an array of books this year. You'll see those references in there. I just quote from one book, but I try to normally in a month's time, I'm going to read maybe 5, 6 books a month. So I'm picking several books on a topic. Sometimes I get one, I start reading it and I think, and I toss it in a pile, goes to Goodwill, and I start reading another book till I find one, the context of it was kind of matches our situation where we're in today. It's really, really those learning new patterns is what we're doing. Start paying attention. But you watch kids and they really pay attention, right? They used to pay more attention. So the more we can expose them to what's going on, the more they attend to things, the more they have interaction. We really need to have more human interaction with the kids. It's very sad when the only interaction they have is simply a cartoon show. They really need to be around people. They need to have more interaction with people. They need to look at how people are operating so they can see those patterns. It's not about playing a video game. It's about playing a life game. So spend some time with your kids. Come on, we're in a lockdown. Spend a little time with your kids. Start to take them to a park. Start to take them for a walk. We're all unhealthy in America. Generally speaking, statistically, we really need to get out there. Right now, Deborah and I are trying to walk somewhere around 2 to 3 miles a day. Come on, it's an hour, right? You can, it's just an hour. So I can go mile and a half away and a mile and a half back. Try to get on the weekends to where we can do like maybe a 6-mile walk or a 7-mile walk. I've got friends that pretty much average 9 miles a day. They're out there a couple hours every day doing some exercise and doing walking because, like me, they're retired. They have the time on their hands. So being able to do that, getting familiar with your neighborhood, getting familiar with landscaping around, getting to the countryside, it's really exciting now when you get out and walk in the countryside. So you see a lot of wildlife that wasn't there a few years ago. The lockdown has open that all up. There's a lot more rabbit population, a lot more squirrels out there. It's hard for me to not go on a walk and see an eagle. And they're all over the place out here in the Northwest, most certainly hunting because now there's food for them, right? And it's really cool. I can sit in my office, I can hear them calling to each other. So it's just kind of fun being out there in the world and going to the blueprint. I go to Rainier and some of those mountain spots. And it's like, it used to be that I had a hard time finding a parking place. And now I go up there and there's hardly any cars. And it's like, wow, perfect time to go in the woods. I see trails of animals that you really didn't see very much or very rarely of. I mean, I've had a lot of bear sightings and things like that. It's really kind of like, wow, that's kind of cool. So that's neat. So it expands the patterns in the relationships. Like, where do you go with that range? Where do you see how this package needs to develop? What is it going to flow into? I have no idea. It's totally unknown. When you were a little kid and someone put cards in front of you and wanted to teach you to play Crazy Eights or something, you had no clue what you were getting into. And you just had to learn those patterns. And that's exactly what we're doing now. We're learning those patterns all over again. It takes time, really, and it takes attention. Look at situations and don't be so quick to making assumptions. It's not, the rules are a little bit getting bent and they will continue to get bent until we get together as a group and make a new set of rules. Is it going to take a little time? Yeah, maybe 100 years or so. So, in the meantime, you better take care of you and look at how the rules have changed for you. We're already getting forced with masks and blah, blah, blah. And so, the theaters in my area are opening, but do I want to sit for 2.5 hours in a movie theater wearing a mask? I wouldn't do that. I just sit for a half an hour wearing a mask, and then I go back to my car and put it on, check my oxygen level, and I'm way the heck down already. So I know that sitting there 2.5 hours, I'm going to walk out there all fuzzy headed, trying to get some oxygen because it's going to be really low. Could we get a face shield where we can breathe? Oh, yeah, they put some face shields out where you can breathe in them, but then they immediately made them illegal. I mean, so it's like, wow, okay. So I don't know. There's no easy answers. We really have to pay attention. We have to kind of pull this all apart. Uh, your job is to pull this all apart. Your job is not just to accept. Your job is to challenge everything, but not by challenge by making a scene. Challenge it by attending to it and find out what the pattern is, what the goal is, where it's going, what it's becoming, what is the flow that we're getting into the mixed up, what decisions do we have to make somewhere in the next couple of years, where are we going to go with this, right? We're still running back from 2008 on like, I can make a little money, break the rules and get caught and only pay a small fine and come out with profit. And we've seen a lot of that corruption. It's become very, very popular at this level. When traditionalism moves out, then that's something that comes in. It moves past that structure. So don't fault anything. Start to say, wow, let's take a look at what we can do going forward. Right now, we have a lot of really silly rules that are kind of meaningless. It really takes more thought, more consideration as we move forward. It has to start somewhere. They're doing what they can do. I'm not faulting anybody. I'm just saying, pay attention here. It's all going to change. It's going to change again. It's going to change again. And the world situation is going to really be changing. So hang on to your hat. I'm kind of looking forward to it. It's kind of all exciting. It's like, wow, but what's it going to do? It'll be interesting to have it unfold and see what it's going to look like. It's not going to go back to anything. So if you think you want to go live out in the woods somewhere and get away from it all, I think there's probably property really cheap in the Appalachians. They've been doing it for a long time. I don't know. I'd think about it a little bit if I were you. But anyway, take a look around. The game's in change. Finding those little clues, those little markers, those little patterns is a new learning curve. So give yourself a little time. It's never conscious. It's always unconscious pieces. But you'll have some aha moments as you observe. You go, wow, I can't believe that person just did that. Wow, it's kind of amazing. Very, very profound. Okay, so if that made some sense, and I've talked way too long this time, short last time, longer this time. All right, so anyway, it was great. Have fun out there. Go ahead, if you have any questions and things that materialized, go ahead and bounce them back to me. I'm still making answers to questions as a different set of videos, and that will be out. I've got 2 of them on my desk right now I'll be playing with. All right, hey, thank you very much. And there we go. Yeah.